Hi guys, I'm Charlie, a Charlie Book Fanatic. Welcome back to my channel. And I bought 13 books this past winter. This is the most books I have ever bought, and I truly feel like a real booktuber right now. And I know that's wrong, but I just spent so much money on books. It's crazy. The first book I want to talk about is a classic I bought and I've never read before, and that is Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. This classic has interested me for so long now. This is obviously about a pedophile who falls in love with, I believe, a 12-year-old girl, and a lot of disgusting things ensue, I believe. And I am so intrigued by this book. Just the premise of it, the idea behind it. I have heard so many people talking about this, and I've been wanting to read this for so long, but I never got to it. And now I have this really pretty edition of it, and I am very excited. The next two things I bought were the first two volumes in the Miss Marvel graphic novel series. I have read the first one, Miss Marvel Volume 1 No Normal, and I liked it, but before this I had already accidentally read, I think, Volume 5 and Volume 6, and I love those volumes, so I know I will love the series, but based on the first one I wouldn't necessarily read on with the series, but I did buy the second volume, Generation Y. I haven't read this one yet, even though I have had it, I think, for a month or two now, but I am very excited to continue on with this series and find out what Kamala Khan is up to. The Miss Marvel series is about this Muslim girl called Kamala Khan, and she turns into Miss Marvel in the first volume. And it's about her as a high school student balancing her life as a superhero, and I think it's so much fun. The art style is absolutely beautiful, and let me show it to you. Like, this is probably one of my most favorite art styles in a graphic novel I've seen so far. Like, it has such a nice art style. I absolutely fell in love with it when I read Volume 5 and Volume 6, and it's one of the main reasons why I want to continue on with the series. A very popular and beloved release is next, and that is Heartless by Marissa Meyer. And this might be a bit of a weird purchase for me because I wasn't really a fan of her Lunar Chronicles. I liked Cinder, I didn't think it was anything special, but then I read Scarlet and absolutely hated it and dropped the entire series. But this premise sounds super interesting. It's about Catherine, who is going to become the Queen of Hearts from Alice in Wonderland. And I have never read Alice in Wonderland, but the origin story of a villain sounds super interesting to me. As well as when I saw this cover on Book Depository, I had to have this. Like, I think this is the prettiest cover. Like, every edition of Heartless is so pretty in my opinion. Another new release that has been talked about on BookTube for quite a bit, and that is Three Dark Crowns by Kendare Blake. I've read another book by Kendare Blake, which was Anna Dressed in Blood. That is her horror, paranormal, contemporary novel, and I really wasn't a fan of it. I really didn't like it. But again, I've heard so many good things, and this is such a different sort of story. This is a YA fantasy about three girls who have to fight each other to death, I believe, to become queen. Like, only one of them can become queen. And that dynamic between these three sisters, I presume they're all close, so that has to be horrifying, but it sounds super interesting, completely different from my other work that I didn't like, and I really wanted to give this a try. Also, the font is humongous. Like, look at that font. It's super big, so I think I can fly through this when I eventually pick it up. Then I got some other classics. Jane Eyre by Charlotte Brontë, which I have been reading since the beginning of February now. I'm really enjoying this so far. It's been very slow, and it's a very thick book. I think it's over 600 pages, so I haven't been going through this as quickly as I would have liked to, but when I read it, I am actually enjoying the story of it. It's about a woman who has been brought up by her family. She has never known her parents, and eventually her family sends her off to this boarding school where she grows up and becomes a teacher eventually, but she gets bored of that life, and she seeks a job as a governess at a mansion, and there she meets the master of the house, who she falls in love with, and it all goes from there. It's so enjoyable. There's also like a thriller aspect to this, which I won't spoil for you, but I was really surprised by how curious I was as to what was actually going on within this manor. Then the other classic I have is the last novel by Jane Austen. I have I had yet to purchase, and it was Sensibility. I have read this one in January and I really enjoyed it. I mostly enjoyed all of Jane Austen's works, actually, some more than others, but I think this one was a really good one. It is not my favourite. It's about these two sisters who are very close with each other. They're called Eleanor and Marianne. Eleanor is the sense and Marianne is the sensibility, and it's basically all about their relationship and the two romances they are both invested in. So Marianne falls in love with a man who doesn't turn out to be who he says he is, and the same thing goes for Eleanor, really. They both aren't very lucky in love for most of this book, and I thought this was super interesting to see how they both dealt with those situations differently. I bought another book I have already read. It is one of my favourites, and that is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky. This is the first book in the Wayfarer series, and it is a sci-fi book about this crew on a spaceship, and it's very character driven. You get to know all of these characters and their backstories. I really liked the second book in the series. It was a companion novel to this book and followed completely different characters. There is going to be a third book released in this series, and there is not a synopsis release yet, but maybe it'll follow the same characters. I honestly really hope so. I honestly feel like I have to get these next two out of the way, so let's just go with them. And I have 2 copies of Twilight by Stephenie Meyer. I have the movie edition and I have the normal edition, and both of these I haven't bought this winter, but I did receive them. I had them a long time ago, but I kind of lost them and I got them back, and now I have both of those on my shelves and I feel like I really need to show them. I'm not going to tell you the synopsis of Twilight because I feel like everybody in the whole world knows about Twilight or has seen the films. So yeah, Twilight. These next 2 books are books in the same series and I'm super excited about them. Those are A Court of Thorns and Roses and The Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. I am not a huge fan of the first book in this series, but I love the second book and I cannot wait for the third book in this series to come out. So I feel like I want to collect the series, and for that to happen I have to buy the first book, but they were really cheap, the paperback copies, so I just bought them. A Court of Thorns and Roses is about Eyre, who lives with her poor family until eventually she kills a fae, and as punishment she gets taken to the land of the fae and she has to live in this huge mansion with the leader of the spring court. Like, the fae lands are built up out of different courts, so we have like the night court, the spring court, things like that, and she has to live the rest of her life as a punishment with the leader of the spring court. And that is where it all starts off from, and how much has changed in the second book already is crazy. But if you didn't like the first book, like if you read it and you didn't like it, please read the second one. Everyone has been raving about it, including me, and I still cannot believe I love it as much as I did. And the last book I have to talk about in this video is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. This is a contemporary new adult. It's all about an abusive relationship, and I just started this, so I'm not really far into it, but the first chapter really grabbed my attention already. I have read Slam by Colleen Hoover, Confess, Ugly Love, maybe someday, so I've read quite a few books by her, and I planned for my next book to be the second book in the Slam series, but I saw this on Book Depository. It was very cheap and I bought it because this is Colleen Hoover's newest release, I believe, and I've heard so many good things about this book, even from people who don't like her other books or have problems with her other books, and say it is a really accurate depiction of an abusive relationship. And it already hit me in the feels from the line in the beginning of the book, because Colleen Hoover wrote about her parents this: "For my father, who tried his very best not to be his worst, and for my mother, who made sure we never saw him at his worst." And I didn't know that Colleen Hoover's parents had an abusive relationship. I immediately got it. I was like, her father abused her mother. And I was so shocked by this. So I feel like there's going to be a very accurate depiction of an abusive relationship, because I don't think Colleen Hoover has been in an abusive relationship herself, but she obviously has experienced it with her dad and her mom, and she writes from her own experience in some way. So I am really excited. I don't know if that's the right word, but I'm very intrigued by this book and I cannot wait to continue on with it. This is my winter book haul. Let me know down below if you've read any of these books and what you think about them. Or do you want to read any of these books? I would love to know. Thank you for watching. Goodbye!